Live. Yeah, we're live. Awesome. Hopefully this connection is going to be a good one today because I don't have my cable, but we're going to see what happens. So I am so excited to be back. I've had a 3-week break from the Positive Effect because we're on Clubhouse. But I'm back and I'm here with David Moss. So welcome, David, to the show.
Hi, April. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you were able to take a break. It's important.
I know. And then people were like, what's happening? Is this not happening anymore? No, it is. I'm coming back with David Moss. So anyway, I'll set us up and then we'll get going with the conversation. You know, this is my live show. I show up every week. Well, I had a 3-week break, but I show up with amazing retail to create affordable leadership development for field leadership, really, after working in it for 30 years. And so, yeah, this is a great, moment to like share David's story. So before we jump into your story, I'm just going to say, if you are joining us, put your name in the chat, tell us where you're coming from. And if you have any aha moments or anything resonated with you throughout this conversation, make a comment because we like to go back and read it afterwards. And I'm going to say, share this in your feed. I'm always asking people to share this in the feed because the more people that find this conversation, the more people learn from it. So David, tell us about your retail story. How did you get into retail? I'm always intrigued because Ron Thurston wrote a book and it's always about the accidental career. So was it accidental? Was it intentional? Tell us how you got into retail.
Yeah, great question. Really, it was one of the first jobs that I had, during high school and into college. If my very first job was a Dairy Queen, and I wasn't going to make that my career. I knew that, and so I worked for Eckerd Drugs for a little over a year. I don't know if you remember Eckerd in the United States, but ended up moving to CVS Pharmacy, where I spent about 10 years. I feel like CVS Pharmacy was my retail boot camp. It was where I was really able to establish and understand what my work ethic meant and the foundations and principles of management specifically. Later on in my career, I think leadership started taking a priority over management. But, I owe my experience at CVS Pharmacy to, I guess, lending itself to the many mistakes that I made, right, as a manager, as a leader, and working through those. How did that feel? How did that make my associates and team members and supervisors feel? So really, it all started with CVS Pharmacy.
Wow. And 10 years, that's a long time in one retail organization. I'm always really interested in that because that takes a real commitment to kind of reinvent yourself, keep growing. I mean, some organizations change a lot when people are in it, so they feel like they always have these challenges. But okay, so then you went from CVS. Where did you go next?
Yeah, so from CVS, I moved to California with my husband from Georgia, where I'm originally from. And, it was one of those moments, April, where we decided to sell quite a bit of our things and go with just 4 huge bags, land in California, and just start our new life out there. And it was that moment where I remember sitting in front of the Pacific Ocean and saying, okay, I gratefully have time to kind of decide what I want to do next. I'm not in a rush. And so reached out to my network. And at that point, my network, right, was not really the network that it is today, but found a great company, Marvel's The Brain Store in California, which was my first introduction into boutique or specialty retail. And I just fell in love. I fell in love with the, got the operations piece. I got that nailed down, but selling culture and team selling and really introducing leadership skills and showcasing opportunities that I had. It was a really exciting time at Marvel's. And unfortunately, Marvel's went through Chapter 11 bankruptcy quite a few years ago now. And that was my forever company. I was going to be there forever, right? I met some of the most impactful, influential, and amazing human beings working for that company. Transitioned into It's Sugar, which is a confection company, candy company,
right.
After the bankruptcy. And, I learned probably 3 or 4 months in that it wasn't the right fit. Great company, from a leadership perspective, wasn't exactly what I was looking for. And I strategically leave that on my resume, although it's just 4 months. April, I battled with that. Are people going to think I'm a quitter, right? I'm going to have to speak to only being with an organization for 4 months. But, I leave that on my resume because I think it's valuable to have that discussion with others that I either lead or that, personal friends of mine, colleagues. It's okay to decide that something isn't right and move on to the next thing.
I love that, because so many people ask me all the time when they're redoing their resume. Now, a lot of people are looking for jobs in retail, right? And they could have this blip like that, or like an experience. Let's say it's an experience and it just wasn't right. And they're like, do I take it off? So I love that you just shared that, because anybody watching this could really gain some insight of why that's not a bad thing to leave it on there. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, our history is our history, and we learn even a day in a company, right? You learn something new, and that something new you can bring to a new table. Interestingly, during that transition, I remember I'd moved to the Bay Area. Company I worked for filed for bankruptcy. I live in one of the most expensive cities, and what am I going to do? I knew I wasn't going to find inspiration from my office inside my apartment, so I put my earphones in, went downtown San Francisco, walked around trying to seek inspiration, and ran into a colleague, former colleague that worked for LOVESAC. The stars aligned. I had conversations, and because I guess that day I chose self-care, I chose to find inspiration. It led me to LOVESAC, which is where I'm at now, which is just a remarkable place to be on many levels.
And you're the regional director for the West, right? So what does your job entail?
Everything. So I guess if I'm to break it down, I have a wonderful team of people that I work alongside from Texas all the way west of the Pacific Ocean. We're an omni-channel business, so my job is to really keep the engagement level high, to make sure that things are clearly defined, that we're stable, and as corny as it sounds, just try to keep everyone happy as much as possible. And that's an impossible feat, but we have love in our name at LOVESAC.
I was going to say that you have love in your name. That is like the highest energy, positive. I'm a very positive person, but that's like the highest positive energetically word in the universe, I believe. And you have it in the name of the organization. Like, how cool is that? And you just went for some inspiration, self-care, and this is where you ended up.
Yeah, I love it.
Is that a thing? Like in your, I know I'm going off script now, like asking some different questions, but I'm interested. So, I mean, I don't know a lot about LOVESAC because obviously, like, I found you in the malls. Now I'm in the States on the West Coast, and I had seen them, and I was like, oh, these are really comfy chairs and things to sit on. So, I mean, the name, is there a story behind the name of LOVESAC, or is it was just a name that they just, because names really matter, right? When it comes to branding and organizations, some people have a reason why they made it, some people don't. But is there a story behind that, or was it just a fun name?
Yeah, there's definitely a story behind it. I think the full story is on lovesac.com on our website. Okay. You can view the story. In case our CEO watches this, I want to make sure I get it right.
Well, yeah, I didn't ask you this question in advance. That's why.
But yeah, we started with LOVESACs, which are big, fluffy, wonderful, comfortable bean bags, and our non-bean bean bags. And really our platform is the Sactionals platform, the couches, modular couches, and we have a new product called Stealth Tech that was just launched. And if you see that, it's an immersive sound experience like no other. So
wow. All right, so we're going to get back to leadership now, because that's why you're here. I'm just always interested in retail, just because I love retail. But so on your retail journey, you've obviously learned a lot of lessons, right? Like good, bad, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. You talked a little bit about like management to leadership. So management was early on, and then you started to embrace leadership or think about that. So what are some really great lessons learned that you can share with us that could help anybody that, is maybe watching or listening in on the podcast?
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, if I think of breaking it down to just a few words, I think really understanding and embracing flexibility, like really understanding flexibility. What does that mean to me? How can I be more flexible for my team and for my peers, colleagues, and supervisors? Along with that, patience. I think patience has been a really valuable tool in life in general. Being kind. I've had leaders really showcase to me how kindness can really move the needle. I think kindness and humility, honesty, and giving ourselves permission to be bold, right? To make bold decisions, to be decisive in those. Humility and being bold kind of together can sometimes make an interesting recipe.
That's true. I mean, I remember when I had to start making decisions, like as I started moving up into higher levels of leadership, and the fear of having to make bolder decisions, let's say. But you talked as well earlier about like some mistakes you make along the way. You learn from mistakes, right? How do you encourage your team, your leaders to embrace making mistakes?
Gosh, I think it starts with the interview process, right? You will likely make a mistake at LoveSac. I'll just use our company as an example. And guess what? I'm here to pick you up. I'm here to support you through that. I think acknowledging to individuals that it likely will happen because we're human, and making it okay to have dialogue around that, giving people permission to talk about it, I think lends itself to be more of a safer place to make those mistakes.
What's a mistake that you made? I'm going to dig into this a bit more, that you really learned from.
Oh gosh, I think one of the most potent mistakes that I made in a transition to multi-unit, but also as a single unit manager, was focusing too much on the operations, and that might sound too, I don't know, not specific enough. But at the end of the day, really I had to learn and adapt that the people piece really is the most important piece. And some things can fall off a plate, and that's fine. But if people are falling off the plate, then that's no good. So really understanding how to leverage our people and how to have a different dialogue to, I don't know, to really create a construct where individuals feel safe, they feel heard, they feel engaged, the whole gambit.
Safe is really important now, I find, as well, in this. I mean, it's always been important, but if I think about the book ACT, the leadership model I wrote about, support was accepting people is the first pillar. And it came because whenever I went to store visits and I asked people, what do they want? What do they need? They'd always say, well, I want to feel supported. And then I'd always be like, well, what does that mean? Because I hear that from 200 stores, but break it down and what does it mean? Because I'm a very action oriented kind of person. I'm like, hey, let's land this and put this into an action so that we can actually make people feel that way. And it always came down to people feeling safe with their boss and feeling like they could show up and be their whole self at work, right? Which is really taking front and forwards, like a stage front and forward now more than ever before, like with inclusion and diversity. I know that in my retail career, 30 years, I never really had training on that. I just inherently could create that with the teams that I led. So I love that now there is more training around this, and it's becoming more important because, like you said, people first, right? So important. 100%. When you think about advice that you've been given, I love asking this question because I've had some amazing leaders that I've worked with that have given me some one-liners or some advice that were just like golden, and I've always passed it on because I feel like when you pass things on and you pay it forwards, you create good karma and you teach people. So is there any piece of advice that you've gained from people that you've worked for that you can share?
Yeah. Gee, lots of great advice. Maybe simple sounding, but I think just to pause, just pausing before you reply, or pausing before you walk into a store or have a tough conversation or have a growth conversation. I think that time to reflect and pause can oftentimes lead us in a better direction than if we act rashly. And even through the pandemic, I had to adjust what pause meant for me. If I'm sitting in front of my computer for 10 hours on back-to-back calls, I need to go take my shoes off, go to the backyard and put my feet in grass, or go take a walk, right? Just pause for a second and allow everything to settle.
That's really good advice. Because in operations, we're always running around multitasking, doing so many things. And when I talk to young leaders now, I'm like, somebody gave me this piece of advice. It was a VP that I worked for about 12 years ago. And she said, April, every day the work's can be longer than, what did she say? As long as your arm, or longer than your arm. And as long as you get your elbow every day, you've done a good job. And I was like, God, that just took the pressure off me. I was like, because that was when I was first a multi-site leader. So I think there's these, and she also said, when other people's performance become your performance, then it's time to really make some decisions. And I thought that was a good one too. But yeah, there's always these pieces of golden nuggets, that you learn along the way from people.
Yeah, you're going to have to send me those beautiful little nuggets of information after this.
I'll send you a book. You can read all about it.
Perfect.
It's all in that. I think it was interesting because I think whenever I talk to a lot of operational leaders, it's like, what do you do? And they're like, I do like 25 things. What do you want me to talk about? And the experience of writing the book itself made me have to write it all down, like all the stories, right? So now I remember them because I'm like, oh yeah, this person said this, but it took me a year to actually write all of that down. It wasn't easy because I had to like remember everything because we do so many things on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you how long it took you to write that book. I can't even imagine amongst all the other things I'm sure you were doing.
Well, it was the pandemic, so I was grounded. I was not traveling like I am traveling again now, but it took about 6 months to 8 months to write it. Yeah, and now it's getting republished under Balboa Press, coming out in December. So it's going to be elevated now, which is cool. So I'm happy to see that. Maybe it'll be in a bookstore, who knows? But
congratulations.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting because people always ask us about, our careers, right? And like, as I've got more experience now, I'm starting to talk to younger people about it, students, whatever. If somebody was going to ask you, like, I love this question. What is a myth that you bust often about working in retail?
Oh, I think the pandemic kind of pushed this even further, but the idea of transferable skills, and that's not to say that, I feel like sometimes even on LinkedIn, there's this conversation of a mass exodus or people wanting to leave retail. And there's plenty of us that love it, right? That it's our career and we're really passionate about it. But for those individuals, let's say someone comes to work on my team or alongside me and they do have aspirations elsewhere. If it's a part-time sales associate or an assistant manager or a showroom manager, whatever it may be, retail is full of many different hats that we wear. And those are all transferable into many different arenas, whether it be continued education or a different industry or different sector, or different business. And I think that could just be understood a little bit more. We give people a chance, right, to talk through what those experiences are and how they're transferable, because they are highly transferable, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, they are. Like, I was in an event the other day and somebody said to me, oh, I've heard about you. You work in retail. They were not in retail. They said, don't you just like move clothes around and stuff? Like, that's what you do, right? You just make things look good. And I was like, no, that's not what I do. I mean, I do that too, but there's a lot of other things I do. I manage multi-million-dollar businesses. And then he was like, oh, whoa, that sounds like a lot. And I was like, it is, but it's really fun. And let me tell you about it, right? I always feel like I'm myth busting. No, I don't just sell clothes or I don't just move things around. There's so much more to what we do. People planning, succession planning, developing people, strategic plans. I mean, customer insights, there's so much to what we do. But at the end of the day, I think if you love having a challenge every day and a fast pace, and I always say somewhere you can make an impact make an impact and then see the actions, right? You can see the actions of your impact the results of your actions in retail. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know personally, I guess in my mid-20s, what am I going to do? I'm trying to figure it out. My other siblings are all off doing X, Y, and Z, varying things. And I was challenged because the world's telling me that retail is not the career path necessarily that defines success of some sort, if I'm being honest. And and I made the decision to go with my passion, right, with my gut. To your point, we get to provide countless opportunities for other individuals as well, which I think is one of the most remarkable things about retail. We were able to touch so many different people in so many different ways, and to provide that opportunity, especially like a part-time associate who's going to move to full-time and gets paid PTO and benefits. That's exciting. That's really, really awesome to provide opportunity and witness that person's life changing in just a small way. I love it.
Yeah, especially when you see that part-time person, 10 years later, they message you and they're like, oh, I'm a district manager now or something. It's like you see people grow and it's like they provide this for their families. And that's why I'm so passionate about it too, because it's one of those, it's funny that you say that, like the world was telling you that this is not a successful career choice. This is one of the reasons why we launched the Retail U Youth Internship Program. with a nonprofit organization to get people to see it as it is a great career choice. And we're training and providing, retailers opportunities to like sponsor these kids going through these programs now so that they can find next talent, because we need to keep fueling the pipeline with future leaders and kind of get rid of that kind of viewpoint that retail's an uneducated, unskilled job, because it's a very skilled job.
Absolutely. And I think at least what I've seen and talking with some of my colleagues as well in other companies, retail's done very well in some sectors through the pandemic, right? And so it's maybe a little bit more valuable to those that maybe thought it wasn't, because we thrive, we are resilient, and we do whatever it takes, right?
It's true. I say retail's always going to be there. Maybe one retailer will, close down. That's happened. But another one's going to pop up as well. That people are always going to shop. There's always going to be a new product to launch, a new product to buy, a new business model. And so, globally, I think Ron always says it's the third largest employment sector in the world. And if you actually think about that, it's a huge opportunity. There's so many different verticals that you can go into, whether it be buying, operations. I love field operations because I love working with the customers and the people piece in the stores. But buying, security, so many different facets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So as you think about, the holiday season, how are you preparing your teams for the next 8 weeks? Is it a busy season for you guys? I don't know, because in home goods, it feels probably like holiday all year last year, because everybody was home fixing their houses, right? I've read some statistics about the home goods sector and how it's had a really phenomenal year. But, what do the next 8 weeks look like? What do you do to get people prepared? Is it a busy season?
Yeah, it's I guess it's always a busy season, to your point. But specifically, I think if I'm to break it down to one thing that we do, it's to pause in Q4. Everything's set up as best as we can through up to Q3, and for Q4, let's just have our rock star teams rock and roll and do their thing as well as they do it, and get through it together. And there might be, and when I'm visiting, there might be some coffee involved, giving them coffee, hey, can I get you a snack? But
people love food in the stores, right?
Oh yeah. But that pausing element, I think it's important, to understand that, increased traffic flow in any business just means they might have less time to do some of the operational things. And so to provide them the landscape to be able to impact the customers in the best way is really the ideal situation.
Yeah, I love that pause. I'm going to take that away with me today. Do you meditate at all? Are you a meditator?
I used to do it more often, but I think for me, meditation has become not necessarily taking 30 minutes in the morning or in the afternoon, in the evening, and dedicating that time. Wish I need to do that better, but sometimes just like I said earlier, taking my shoes off, putting my feet in the grass, and for 15 seconds, just kind of being present. I think it's a definite example of small meditation.
Yeah, it's just being mindful and having those moments, right? I always myth bust meditation. We have a meditation challenge every December at Retail U, and it's literally 15 minutes. Just do something that's gonna just calm your mind down so that you can stay centered, and you'll be the best version of you. And some people say, "Oh, really? Launch a meditation challenge at the busiest time of the year?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?"
Yeah. Absolutely.
This is when you need to. It's like people that say to me, "Oh, we're too busy to do leadership training." I'm like, I don't know. I think you're missing out on something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were going to give somebody your top tips or best advice for them to be a successful retail leader, somebody that's watching this, listening to you talk and saying, "You know what? I want to be a regional director one day. I want to, follow in David Moss's shoes. I want to grow." What would be your best piece of advice for somebody watching this that is thinking like that?
I feel like I might have answered that differently in 2019, 2020, the pandemic, and that whole year. I think I was grateful to have experienced a few things that helped me look through a different lens and have a different mindset. So these days, I think those focuses would be humility, something that is an evolution for us all. I think we're always working to understand what that means to us, and how we can inject that into our leadership or our teams. Active listening, I think, is something I'm trying to become better at. The active part in that is the important piece, right? Active listening to all. And then I alluded to it earlier, but I think an organic and genuine focus or investigation into psychological safety and what that looks like. Psychological safety formally has 4 dimensions to it. And I think each dimension, we as leaders can really investigate, okay, what do we create for our teams and for our people? And what is the impact of that? And short-term, long-term differentials as well. Psychological safety, I think, has even more potent place in the workplace and in our personal lives. So that would be my third one.
4 dimensions. Do you have them off the top of your head?
Challenger safety, learner safety, and then there's 2 more that are slipping my mind right now.
I know, I didn't ask you that in advance, but I was just interested. I'm going to actually go and look that up because I haven't done a lot of reading on that, actually. I think that's important.
Yeah, it's really neat stuff. I would encourage anyone just to even Google it and see what it's about and see if they want to dive in deeper.
Mm-hmm. Well, you taught me something today. I'm going to be Googling that when I'm sitting at the airport this afternoon, flying back east. So thank you for that, because it's really important. I truly believe that when people feel safe, they can be their best version of themselves. And we need to care as leaders about that. I know I grew up in an era where it was like, separate, don't be emotional, separate it. But I truly believe we're entering into an era of leadership that's bringing more love into the workplace, which is funny because that's in your name of your company. But I've interviewed a few leaders, and they say that, bringing love into the workplace, and it's kind of a taboo kind of like, subject that we don't want to talk about. But, we have to care for one another more now than ever. We've been through a year of, really learning and identifying that as leaders. So I think it's so important.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's coming up on time. This was an amazing conversation, David. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Positive Effect. It was wonderful to hear your stories and your advice and just learn more about you.
Oh, thank you. All the thanks to you. It's inspiring just to watch what you do. You are, to me, someone that I look up to, and I appreciate you having me on here. But more importantly, I appreciate the message that you send out and the opportunity you give other individuals to share their story, because retail is a great place to be, and there's all sorts of people out there ready and willing to help make it a career for someone else as well. And you're assisting in that process. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Positive Effect. So if you find this, I'm going to say share it with more retail people that you know so that they can join in on this conversation, and we'll go back and have a look at the comments. And I can see that Dean just wrote down actually the 4 stages of psychological safety. So I'm going to, on the comments, so I'm going to, thank you, Dean. So I'm going to go and read that and do some more learning around that. But again, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you so much, April. Enjoy your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.